Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Purpose, Passion, and Profession podcast. I'm Junaid Afeef, your host, and today I've got my good friend Furqan Mohammed as my guest. Furqan is a fellow attorney. He is a double Loyola University of Chicago graduate with an undergraduate degree in psychology as well as a law degree from Loyola. He worked in big firms and is now a owner of his own law firm. And he's got a very interesting background. He does some incredibly interesting work, and he's very involved in community work. And I'm looking forward to digging into really what motivates him to do the things that he does. And, like how he melds his passion and his purpose into a career as a lawyer. So, Furqan, welcome.
Thanks, Junaid, for having me. It's an honor to be here. Honestly, I love the work you do, and I'm always happy to be a part of it and give back to young students who are interested in exploring law.
Oh, thank you very much for being here. One of the things that really motivated me to put something like this together is that going to these law conferences, especially these Muslim law student conferences, where I know you and I have both been panelists, I've been surprised by how eager law students are, for example, to connect with lawyers. They're very eager to make those connections. I want to see if we can use this podcast format to sort of amplify our ability to share our expertise with those students so that they can really shorten the learning curve in their careers, maybe not make the same mistakes we made, and achieve their objectives sooner rather than later.
And I think there's a lot to value from meeting lawyers and hearing their stories because that's where you learn what you can't learn in the textbooks, right? So law school can only teach so much. Honestly, I feel like I learned way more than I learned in law school once I got into the real world and started actually practicing law. So I wholeheartedly agree. I feel like we've seen each other at a couple of these legal conferences and Muslim law student conferences. Kids are eager to learn. I think they really need to understand what the practice of law is once they leave law school. So I'm always happy to get with the information and the topics we chat about.
So, did you always want to be a lawyer?
I did not actually. I actually wanted to be a high school teacher, and I was already well on that path through college. I actually worked at my alma mater high school. I was a coach, I was a substitute teacher, and basically they were going to offer me a job, or I could probably have gotten a job, but something changed in me maybe my junior year of college, and I kind of thought to myself, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? And I was already starting to get a little, I don't know if bored is the right word, but just kind of felt like I was doing the same thing every year. And I really wanted to see what else was out there. And honestly, the way I got introduced to law is essentially what we're doing here. One of the kids that I coached in cross country, his mom was a lawyer. So, I mean, I was just kind of evaluating, and we didn't have the Google resources that we have now, but she was one of the lawyers I spoke to first. And she was just so passionate about explaining what law school was all about, what the practice of law was all about. And to this day, I appreciate her because she let me shadow her for the day. So I got to spend time with her at her office, at the courthouse. And she was a probate and estate planning lawyer, which coincidentally ended up being one of the things I started focusing on later and much later in my career. But just having the opportunity to talk with her, shadow her, that's what really solidified and cemented my desire to go to law school. It was one of those things where you're helping a lot of people do, with things that they have problems with. And B, I just felt like no 2 days are ever the same. No two clients are ever the same. And the idea of having that diversity of experiences really is what cemented it at the end of the day.
So, around your junior years, when you kind of pivoted away from education to law,
Correct. Correct.
and did you go right into law school after graduating from university?
I did. So I took the LSAT essentially that same summer, started applying, and alhamdulillah did well enough for a good score to get into Loyola and went straight through. But a little, side note for me was I continued working at that high school through law school. So I actually funded my way. A considerable part of my law school was funded by me being able to work. So I ended up going into the part-time program at Loyola and finished in 3.5 years instead of 3 years. But that extra, that flexibility gave me the opportunity to keep working. And I still really enjoyed coaching. I still really enjoyed working with kids. So I continued to do that through law school.
What got you into track and cross country? Were you a runner?
I was a runner. I was the captain of the team my junior and senior years. And then the coach just, I developed such a strong bond with the coach and the kids that were still there that they just said, hey, would you mind sticking around and coaching with us while you're still, going into college? So, I mean, it's just something that's so much fun and so meaningful for the students that I did it for the 5 years, essentially or I did it for about 5 years after I graduated high school. I stuck around pretty much until the point where law school, as you know, gets so intense and so time consuming. I couldn't do it after 5 years. So I even did it through my first year of law school. And that's when I had to kind of call it quits. But, it's always been something that I really enjoy.
Are you still running?
Running is a very relative term, I would say, but I usually get out for a jog. I try to play basketball here and there with friends. But yeah, mostly I just, when time permits, I try to do more. When time is a little more of a commodity, I guess, that I don't have much of. I try to go out and take walks when I have phone calls, for example. So I'll actually take client calls while I'm walking if it's something that's more general in nature. I don't need to be in front of a computer. So I try to incorporate exercise and activity into my daily work.
So you graduated in 3.5 years. So you finished in December of 2011. Is that correct?
Correct, exactly.
And then you took the bar exam and you started practicing law in 2012. You were a summer associate at the firm that you landed at after graduation, if I remember correctly.
Correct. So the only thing that kind of changed a little bit is our summer associate positions in the part-time program would be after the second year of your law school, path. So I ended up becoming a summer associate at Perkins Coie, worked there for the summer, was blessed to have a great experience, and was invited back to be a full-time associate upon graduation, which, again, most people start at a traditional time period, but for me, they actually moved up my start period. So I graduated in December of 2011, like you said. I took the bar in February. They had me starting, I want to say it was May 1st was my first start date. So they let me start before, usually their summer class starts after the bar exam with the summer graduation. So I got to start 3-4 months earlier than the other associates who ended up starting that year.
And what kind of work did you do when you first got to Perkins Coie?
So I think most firms now have a system where they acknowledge that most people don't know what they're going to be doing for the rest of their life. So they would give us the opportunity to try out a couple of different practice areas, work with different groups. You get a whole range of different experiences, practice area wise, not just practice area wise, but also in terms of the personalities that you're dealing with. So ultimately, what I always tell associates or up and coming associates is, get a feel for different practice areas, different personalities, different practice groups, different partners. And ultimately, I think that you'll get a sense or feeling that this is the group that you really feel comfortable with, that you really seem to enjoy working with. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like law school, Junaid, where sometimes you think the class that you're going to love, you don't end up loving. And then sometimes some passion strikes you, and either it's just a professor that you really gravitate towards or a partner that you really gravitate towards. And I think a lot of people, that's when you really know what you want to do. It's really about who you want to work with more so than any particular practice area. The partners that you work with, the associates that you work with are the make and break in terms of what your experience is going to be. So ultimately, I ended up, when they asked me to choose, and I think it was pretty clear by that point, I had fallen into commercial litigation, and with a couple different subgroups within commercial litigation is where I ended up spending my time. And I ended up, just to kind of fast forward a bit, I ended up there for 5 years. I worked there for 5 years. I actually left the firm on May 1st, 2017. So on my 5th year anniversary is my last day of working there. And I started my own firm in exactly 5 years at Big Law.
So did you leave Big Law because you didn't enjoy it, or there was a practice area that you were interested in that that particular firm wasn't involved in? What motivated you to make that switch?
Every year I would kind of do a self-assessment of, do I still want to be here? Do I enjoy what I'm doing day in and day out? And every year I felt like the balances, I guess, of, my evaluation was starting to lean more and more towards, I don't think I want to do this for the rest of my life. I think there's more for me to do. So I think by my like third or fourth year, I was already starting to feel like the scales of my considerations were heavily weighing in me going in a different direction. But I also realized big law wasn't necessarily the only thing I wanted to do. And most, again, I think, Junaid, you've talked to a lot of lawyers. Most big lawyers don't jump into their own firm. But there was a couple different considerations that ended up making that the best choice for me. One of them was I kind of got involved with some pro bono work my fourth year at Perkins, which was helping a lot of the taxi drivers with their taxi medallion loans negotiations. This was all around the time that Uber and Lyft had really come into the market in Chicago. The taxi medallion prices, the medallion is like a license to operate a taxi. The price of the medallion was just plummeting. And ultimately, it led to a lot of these owner operators of the taxis falling into these astronomical loans for their medallions that they could never repay. And when I was leaving the firm, I had been volunteering, just kind of providing general advice pro bono to a bunch of taxi drivers. And, when I was leaving the firm, the issue that I always had was I could give them general advice. I couldn't represent them at the firm. And I tried so hard to find a firm that would be willing to help the taxi drivers. And honestly, I couldn't find somebody. And I'm blessed to say that's ultimately what made me realize, like, hey, if I had my own firm, I could do this work. No one can stop me. But every firm that I would ask would just say, hey, I don't have this experience. It's not something I really have the bandwidth or the capacity to do. I don't know anything about it. So, when I hung up my shingle, I remember to this day, when I hung up my shingle, I had a line of taxi drivers ready to sign up with me because no one else in town was representing taxi drivers in renegotiating the loans, trying to settle the loans, defending them in the commercial foreclosure cases, because it's essentially like any other piece of property. If a bank wants it back, they have to file a foreclosure proceeding and acquire the medallion back, but no one was there to defend them. So I essentially took on all these cases and became kind of the go-to taxi lawyer, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I, in the course of the next couple of years from 2017 onwards, I still did. I was blessed to say that some of the clients that I had originated at Perkins Coie or I had worked on, they followed me out of the firm because I had become their go-to day-to-day lawyer. So that really helped a lot when you have 3, 4, 5 clients that are leaving with you from a big firm to my own firm where, they get the rate pressure is not there with a small firm. It's much more convenient for them or much easier for them financially to work through my firm than it is a firm like Perkins. So a few of them followed me to my own firm. That helped a lot. And then, just having this niche practice area that I was doing, I didn't have to do much marketing. It just literally new drivers would show up at my office and sign up for legal services. So ultimately, the thing that really pushed me into my own firm was I wanted to do a practice area that I felt was really in need, was there that no one else was doing. And, it's just, you look back now and to all the good that it led to. At the time you're like, well, it's not like it's the most lucrative area of law, right? Or it's not the most financially sensible decision I could have made. But ultimately you do what you feel is right and what you feel is justice. And that's ultimately, if you're becoming a lawyer, you can't ignore that feeling. If you feel that feeling, you got to go with it. And I'm so blessed that I did because it led to so many other doors opening. It led to so many other things that I got to do that most lawyers, even 3 times my age, haven't done by now. Like I've been featured on the New York Times, right? I've gotten tens of, at least like 15, 20 interviews with the media, WGN, et cetera, to be featured on the New York Times on the front page. That's something that not many lawyers can ever claim, let alone somebody who's, only 5 years out of law school. So, and then just the work that I do now obviously kind of segued from that taxi medallion work because those same drivers, when you do good by them, they sing your praises to all their WhatsApp groups and all their friends, and ultimately you get a new wave of clients through them, not just in taxi medallion licensing work, but then it kind of spawned from there to become personal injury and a variety of different practice areas where they're coming to me for everything now.
So, in your background with your family, was there a business experience, and was that angle of the law interesting to you, the business of law?
I wouldn't say as much initially as I thought it would be, but ultimately I found myself enjoying the business of law much more than the actual practice of law, which I enjoyed the work that I was doing. But once you realize that there's a whole other side of the business aspect of law, I mean, it made me even more excited. So, I mean, I love what I do now. It's less legal work, more business operations, more marketing, more branding, more kind of strategic client management, less so, going to court, depositions, and the such.
Now, you started your career even before you graduated. You were a summer extern at a federal district court, and then you were also a law clerk at the Attorney General's office, the Illinois Attorney General's office in the Special Litigation Bureau. Uh, and I believe you were a litigation associate at Perkins Coie. So, what was it about litigation that you enjoyed most and enjoyed least?
I loved the research and writing. If that's all I could do all day, every day, I don't think I would have been that opposed to it. What I found myself not enjoying is the adversarial nature of litigation. So I will say when I was exploring different practice areas, I didn't feel like I had a leg up on most of those like transactional practice areas. I didn't feel like I had that experience or that financial background or any other particular background that made me a strong candidate for any of them. Litigation, I feel law schools do a really good job of preparing you for litigation. I was always good at the research and the writing, again, from the Cali Awards in legal writing to, just the overall performance I did. A lot of that comes from my enjoyment of researching and writing. So that's where it stemmed from. And like I said, I think it ultimately became a question of like, which partners did I see myself working with every day, potentially for the rest of my life. And I was fortunate to find a good group of litigators at Perkins who, just, started working with me. I really gravitated towards them and I really enjoyed working with them. And ultimately that's what led me to the decision to become a litigator. But
And then
I guess the downside was I just, you kind of look at the adversarial nature of litigation generally. I just was starting to not really enjoy that aspect anymore. And the stress would sit with me for, you can't just shut it off. Or some people are much better than others at shutting it off. And I couldn't do that. So, I mean, I found myself stressing more and more about the adversarial side of the work that I was doing. And I just, I didn't think I wanted to do that for the rest of my life.
So I think that's an interesting point because I love litigation. I love being in court. I love the adversarial nature. And I think what that speaks to is that there's not a right or wrong answer to that.
Right. I mean, I have obviously a team of lawyers that are doing my litigation. I now enjoy more the aspect of client management and client development and business operations than I do going to court, doing the depositions, writing the briefs. And again, part of that stems from what's your real, like, what are you the best at that no one else can replicate? That's at the end of the day, that's the question you want to ask yourself. Am I the only one that can do this deposition? Probably not. Realistically, there's a lot of great lawyers out there. Can anyone else do what I can do, which is the marketing, the business development, the community relations? I think that's where where my business is very unique. The way I generate my clients, the way I manage my clients, how the clients find me. I mean, it all kind of stems from community contacts and relationships. And no one can just come in and start building relationships. That's a certain skill set that I felt was unique to me. So for me, it just made more sense to be focused on that aspect of it than it is to be doing the actual litigation.
So now you are how many years out of law school?
13, I think, if I can count my math properly, about 13 or 14.
Okay, so the bulk of your career now has been in private practice for yourself. How is that going, and where are you at now? I see your jacket says lawyerfurqan.com. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about that.
Yep. So, I mean, MST is still the firm. Like Mohammed Shamaila Tabai is the firm I started with a couple of friends right from 2017. We're still working together. Things have just kind of changed a bit in the sense that we used to do a couple of practice areas together. I mean, we've always had a niche at our firm for Islamic estate planning. So I give talks actually still on that topic. I don't do the legal work anymore. My colleague, partner, Amro does that. So we found ourselves operating more in a silo these days. So when I say silo, it's almost like we have, different law firms within the same umbrella. So my work is now kind of pivoted entirely into personal injury. I would say probably 98% of what I do now is personal injury. 2% is a mix of other things. My partner, Amaro, he does real estate transactions estate planning, which includes Islamic estate planning, and he'll do a couple other corporate things. But essentially, it's segued a little bit differently for both of us. So we operate almost parallel to each other, except we share the same infrastructure. So the branding that comes from that is, I think a lot of people, as you know, with lawyers, ultimately most people don't hire a firm, they hire a lawyer. They know a lawyer. So, I mean, when I was kind of thinking through how can I expand my business, one of the things that kept coming up, and, obviously I have people I trust, people who've been doing this for much longer than I have. And one of the colleagues that I was talking to said, hey, you should really think about rebranding, because not just personal injury, but law itself is changing. The business of law is changing. It's consolidating. It's getting, the big are getting bigger. I think a lot of the smaller firms are going to find it very challenging to find work. A lot of the generalists, people who do like a hodgepodge of everything, I think they're going to start falling off the wayside. That's not the way law works anymore. It's getting more kind of technologically advanced. AI is going to become a big part of it. I just think there's a lot changing in the business of law that most people may not be privy to yet. But on the branding and marketing side, I mean, I'll give you an example. As you probably may know, Junaid, like the keyword searches, right? Like personal injury lawyer near me or accident near me. Those are the most expensive keywords for Google, right? So it's really, really hard for lawyers who are in personal injury to compete with online marketing, for example. And more marketing is going online now, but it's really, really hard to compete with these big law firms. I mean, you can tell from the billboards, there's quite a few of them, and their marketing budgets are just unlimited. So for me, it's not about trying to outspend them on ads or trying to do, find ways to get, in that search running for, personal injury lawyer near me. But at the end of the day, people come to me, they know my name. So I want to continue to kind of develop my name as something that sticks in people's head. So when you end up searching for a lawyer, you're not going to search personal injury lawyer near me. You're going to search lawyer Furqan, and hopefully that's going to pop me up very quickly. So the whole idea or concept behind branding with your name is to try to get people to remember that name if they ever need anything, instead of trying to be, a personal injury lawyer near you or near me.
Interesting. And in your practice, how are you leveraging technology? You mentioned the way technology is changing. I know that every day I read in the newspaper something about AI and how it's becoming more and more effective. So how about for you? How's that impacting your practice?
I think, yeah, so there's, obviously a lot of different tools and client relation manager software, legal software. We've invested heavily in setting up the right software. So we use something called Litify, for example. It's built on Salesforce. It's obviously very costly, but the amount of work it saves is just amazing, how quickly and efficiently a team can work with the right software. So I find myself with our team not necessarily needing more hands on deck, but we're implementing more software. So everything from how we manage our cases through Litify to how we draft our demands, which AI is now a big part of how we draft our demand packages for the insurance companies. We've really tried to incorporate as much technology as we can. There's an app called Case Status, for example, that we use. Basically, you can text our team of lawyers and paralegals anytime when you have issues. So it's not like, hey, if I disappear off the face of the earth, my team knows exactly what I'm talking to them about because it's all on that Case Status app. The whole point of it is, how can you incorporate technology? I still have, stories of people saying, hey, whenever I need to reach my lawyer, I have to call and leave a message with the secretary, and the secretary tells me he's in court for the next 2 days and he's going to get back to you in 3 days. For me, I'm like, well, no, just shoot me a text and either I or somebody from my team is going to respond to you, usually within a few hours. So just cutting down as much of that red tape, making it as easy as possible for clients to be serviced the right way, the way that they want, right? Nobody wants to call a landline and, ask for their lawyer who's going to call them back three days later. People want service now. They want, their answers now. So, a lot of it is, how can we really streamline the operations? How can we make it as simple as possible for the clients to get what they need, so that we can get the best result and the best experience? So, we found ourselves spending a lot of money on that, but at the end of the day, the amount of time it saves, the amount of, the head count that it saves, I think is well justified.
So, there's that saying that, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. The adage, and that leads people, especially young people, to think that in order for them to find the right career, it's got to be in that thing that they love to do. And I found that a lot of times young people get worried because they're not sure, well, what is that one thing that I love to do? How have you managed that concept? What is the thing that you're most passionate about, or the things that you're most passionate about? And have you necessarily translated that passion into the work you're doing now, or is that something separate?
I mean, that's a loaded question, Junaid. So, I mean, I think at the forefront, um, anyone who says that this is it, I feel like they're limiting themselves, right? So, I mean, I didn't think I was going to do taxi medallion licensing work, right? So, a lot of it is you can't pigeonhole yourself into something you think you want. Um, it's really just about keeping an open mind to whatever life brings to you. And I feel like, for all my different faults, one thing that I do credit myself for is when I saw an opportunity, I went for it. There was no like dilly dallying or, hey, I don't think I want this. There's no cost to exploring it. Just explore it and see where it goes, right? So my career is very unique in that sense because I found myself going from big law to taxi medallion work, which no one else has ever probably transitioned from. And then I found myself doing Islamic estate planning. So we've given talks and seminars across the country in Islamic estate planning. And the way that came about is my partner and I would just kind of talk about unique areas of law that are not being serviced. He's actually in estate planning by background, but the two of us together had this idea to start marketing Islamic estate planning services, which is essentially, just to explain it to the audience, it's essentially the intersection between secular estate planning, which is, wills, trusts, powers of attorney, etc., and blending that with what are the Islamic religious obligations of estate planning. So Islam is unique in that sense that there are certain rules and procedures and guidelines that you have to follow to be an Islamic compliant or Sharia compliant estate plan. So there were not, back in 2017 when we started doing this work, not many lawyers, maybe a handful of lawyers in the country were doing it. So we really kind of capitalized on that. We wanted to see where it went. And, it's a big part of my Amro's practice now, not mine so much. But to this day, we still give talks across the country. Every month or two, we're giving a talk somewhere in the country or local on this topic at our local mosques, nonprofits, community centers, etc. I mean, we kind of just go with whatever. And again, none of this is stuff that I foresaw, but when you think of something that, is something that's a need in the community, I think it's only a fool which should pass that up. So, I mean, I can think back to my time in law school where certain practice areas were really hot, right? So we had people who were really passionate about maybe doing a certain practice area, which might have been, really hot and heavy at the time when we were graduating law school. Some of those same practice areas now are just completely, stagnant or not really as busy as they used to be. So I think a lot of what law is being able to pivot and being able to find new ways to develop, new ways to grow, finding new practice areas if you need to, or developing ways that you can continue to expand your knowledge base, your client base, and your operations. And honestly, I find joy and passion just in being able to explore new avenues, finding new things to do that no one else has thought of.
So I do see you out in the community a lot giving these talks. Are you enjoying that?
I love it. I mean, I love helping people. I love being FaceTime with people. It's one of those things where, especially when you're doing Islamic estate planning, for example, I give a lot of different types of talks. One being like, I've done crash courses for new drivers on like how insurance works, for example, because my main practice area is injury and accident law. But I find myself doing estate planning talks. I find myself doing various other seminars related to law. I mean, I'm always happy to educate the community. One thing is, Junaid, I mean, the whole basis for your podcast is I think our community is very underdeveloped when it comes to resources in law, mentorship in law. So, I mean, I'm always ready to talk to law students, to talk to whoever needs anything in any practice area. I'm happy to jump in because I think there's such a knowledge gap in our community on things related to law. So, I mean, I love it. I meet a lot of new people. And at the end of the day, for me, it's about knowing as many people as possible, being kind of thought of when they have, a legal need, especially like an accident or injury need.
It's been my experience, and I try to impress this on young people that you may have certain things that you really enjoy doing, and those will always be there. But I've always found that when I get good at something, I enjoy it. And I tell people that look for the opportunities and then figure out how to get good at that. And I promise you, more likely than not, when you get good at it, you're going to enjoy it. What do you think about that?
I would wholeheartedly agree with that message. So I tell people don't get pigeonholed into something or don't think that this is the only thing I can do. Keep an open mind, keep exploring it. You would be shocked at how much you'll enjoy things that you never thought you would enjoy. And I remember like there's a story of we had this professor at Loyola Law School. I didn't take his class, but he would teach tax law, which you would think would be the most boring class, and so many people would take this tax law class. I'm blanking on the professor's name, but so many people would take this tax law class and then just fall in love with tax law, which you would never imagine anyone would fall in love with tax law. But that's how good the professor was at just bringing his passion forward and essentially rubbing it off on the students. So I felt like a lot of students, or maybe a handful of them at least, end up in tax law in one form or another because they really found themselves enjoying the knowledge area as opposed to keeping a closed mind on what it is that they think they want to do or what they think they're going to be good at. The more you can explore, the more you can be open minded. I think the more fun you're going to have, and then take the opportunities when they come. You'll be surprised at how much you enjoy different things.
Now, you and I are both active in the Muslim community, and we're both members of the Muslim Bar Association. And we see right now that there is such a need for lawyers to represent the interests of the faith community in general because of some of the anti-Muslim biases that exist. What is your advice to law students who want to serve the community but also want to make a living?
I don't think the two have to be mutually exclusive. I think there's ways to help the clients, help the community in a way that actually is a decent way to make a living. So, I mean, sometimes it's a thing of, or it's a career path where your main job may not be that, but there's no limitation on pro bono, for example. So even when I was at Perkins Coie, I'm not necessarily getting to do community work day in and day out, but a significant amount of time that I spent was used pro bono hours wise, helping people in our community, doing pro bono clinics at the South Asian Legal Clinic, volunteering with other organizations that I felt were serving the same communities that I was a part of. So there's always ways to get involved. That's one of the beautiful things about being a lawyer. There's always ways for you to give back. Nothing stops me today from volunteering at a legal clinic or getting involved in immigration law, for example. There's really nothing that stops you. You can do anything you want to help. So just be on the lookout for opportunities and ways to help. And, if you find them, take it upon yourself because ultimately not many people can do what we can do as lawyers.
I agree with that. And I think that because of our training, we have the capacity to do more than just the traditional practice of law, whether it's transactional or litigation. And I tell young people, I mean, you have skills in communication, written and verbal. And there are so many opportunities in the community to, be that person who can represent the community, you know, as a spokesperson in the communications departments. And you can fulfill your purpose if that purpose is serving the community without having to make it your career. I think that's one of the things, even with my kids, I try to tell them, if you can find a way to take your passion and your purpose and fulfill those in your career, you hit the jackpot. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So I mean, whatever it is that's your passion project, if it's not your full-time job, there's no reason why it can't be your side hustle, right? So focus on what you really want to do, and chances are there's already people doing it. Find the like-minded individuals or organizations and get involved in whatever capacity you can, even though it may not be your main practice area. We're not specialists or limited to a specialty. You can do whatever you want.
So, how has your personal life changed from going from a large law firm to starting your own law firm to now kind of, being set? In other words, like you've been doing it for 8 years. And so I'm imagining that things they're not on autopilot, but you've got systems worked out. So, how's that changed? Big law firm starting a private practice to now maintaining and growing a thriving practice.
I think there's a common misconception that I worked more in big law, but I think my wife will tell you I probably work more now than I did then. It's just that the work has changed and it's a lot more around my schedule. So the nice thing about owning your own law firm and having your own clients is I manage my own workload. The downside to that is I manage my own workload, which is just a lot of work, right? So a lot of times I'll find myself working different ways in different areas, but I'm not beholden to anyone but my own clients, which is maybe a conversation for another day. But there's no better, in my opinion, there's no better feeling in the world to have your own law firm and managing your own clients and your own book of business. So I find myself working a lot. I find myself working different than I did, when I was a young associate, but it's allowed me to spend more time with my family, even though I'm working a lot more. It's allowed me to have that flexibility to do the things that I really want to do. And a lot of that, Junaid, as community service events, sponsoring things that I'm really passionate about, getting involved in different organizations. I mean, that's the stuff that, not just drives my business, that's a secondary benefit of it, but these are the things I always wanted to have time to do. And I've been able to carve that time to have the financial resources to do it. And, inshallah, it's just a question of continuing to develop finding the things that I really want to do and being a part of those. Again, my day-to-day now is very, very different than what it was in the beginning part of my career. A lot more management now, a lot more client management, staff management, systems overview, branding, marketing. We're doing a lot of work on the digital side. We're doing a lot of work with new systems and things. So I find myself much more in that capacity. And again, enjoying every bit of it, but it's just become a very different day-to-day practice for me, where I would probably say the majority of my work day-to-day is not legal in nature. It's more strategic and operational and more client management than it is, quote unquote legal work.
Now, one thing I've noticed about you is that you are doing a lot of community work, and you're one of the few lawyers, I think, that does that level of community work. So, what's driving you?
I mean, just to give, I guess, a little background, there's things that I just, when I see it, I like it, right? So a lot of people will say, well, I like this, and then they'll just put it in the back of their mind. For me, if I see something I like, I want to jump on it and do it. So it'll just be everything from, we've done fundraisers, charity fundraisers for Palestine. We've done fundraisers for mosques. I've done fundraisers for political candidates that are anti-war, anti-genocide, who are much more that, that I really feel I should support. Just trying to think of the host of different things, whether it's sponsoring kids basketball leagues to events of any sort. It's just mentoring, advising students, just whatever I see. If I can do it, I want to be a part of it. I guess again, it drives business, which is nice. Frankly, I don't really care that much if it does or doesn't. But if I see something I like, I want to be a part of it. I pray that we all get reward for the things that we do. But not many people have that opportunity. So I'm really, really blessed to have the time, B, the support from my family to do it. C, to have the financial resources to be able to do it. So alhamdulillah, it's just one of the things that keeps me really active and keeps me really engaged. Otherwise, I feel like you kind of get into a hole of, just constantly focusing on yourself and the things that you want. But in reality, when you look outside or look up, there's a whole different world of people that have needs. And unfortunately, I don't think that's getting less, with technological advances and things. I feel like the needs that our community has are growing, and how do we support them? It's just, you're blessed. You realize you're really blessed to be able to do those kinds of things, as part of your business. So I encourage anyone who has their own law firm, I encourage everyone to get involved in whatever they can. It's good for you. It's not just good for the community, but it's really good for you just to kind of get more perspective on what people's needs are. The other kind of thing I will say is, and I think it maybe answers your older question you asked a little earlier. When you start your own law firm, I feel like there's a lot of growing pains, a lot of things that you're going to mess up on, you're going to learn from. As I look back now, being kind of 8 years removed from starting my firm, I would say it took me a good 5 years to realize what it is that was really made it all worth it. If you ask me in year 2 or 3, like, did you make the right move leaving law, big law, or should you have stayed there? I might have given you a different answer. It took me 5 years to get to that point where I could say that was the best decision I ever made. And looking back now, it's just getting better and better. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to wrap up, when you're not working, when you're not doing community service, what are you doing for fun?
Um, I feel like the community service, I've made that my fun aspect. So not to sound like a loser, but a lot of the fun I get is kind of doing the events that we do. For example, Junaid, seeing all my old friends and kind of working together towards another cause. I feel like a lot of people in life, you just kind of go through and, I think there's a way to hang out where there's a better cause or a common good that you're all working towards, or you could sit around and chat with people, or you can go out and work towards a common good as the same group. So, I mean, a lot of what I'm trying to do is change mindset. So it's not just, hey, I'm going to go hang out with my friends and accomplish nothing. It's like, hey, let's do this fundraiser together and we'll all get to hang out there as well. So it's a mindset shift for me to be like, that's where I want to derive my fun from community work, from community service. At the end of the day, honestly, Junaid, you get to a point where, you can only use so much money and do so much, right? I mean, for yourself, I think the best thing you can do is stop focusing on yourself, start focusing on the community and its needs. And I think it just leads to a much more fulfilling life. I have mashallah, one kid who is about to be 7. I have another one on the way, inshallah, in January. So, I mean, I love just playing basketball with my son. He loves it. He's so passionate about it. He keeps asking me to coach him. So actually, that's going to be one of my next, passion projects, probably coaching my son's basketball. So, I mean, I want to focus on that, focus on the family time. I mean, these are the things, Junaid. I mean, I love your relationship with your kids. I mean, I always tell my wife about it as well. My hope is to be able to spend time with my son or kids and, develop that relationship where, you can only get that kind of relationship if you invest time, they trust you, and they get to see you a lot more. So my hope is focus on that. That's so much fun for me. Focus on the community development, the community good, the charitable causes that I like. Focus on those, continue growing my business because, again, the way I operate, the way I work, I mean, I feel like, I love what I do. I want to keep doing it and I want to grow it. Outside of that, fun, what do I do? Slowly starting to get back into basketball. So I'm starting to play some basketball again like I used to back in college and high school. So that's been a lot of fun, just kind of seeing what I can do and not do now at the age of 40. I just turned 40. But, inshallah, just continue getting involved, doing good work and working on the business, working on the family. That's it. I think fun and work is all. Fun and work is kind of blended together now, which is amazing for me. I love it.
No, well, that's a lot. And I think you're absolutely on the right track with spending time with the kids. That's been the thing that's paid more dividends than anything else that I've
Yep.
done in my life is to dedicate my focus to my children, coaching their little league
Yep.
soccer and wrestling and all that other stuff has been probably, like the best investment ever made. And,
Totally.
we can only do so much, even when we have this vision to serve the community and stuff. But at the end of the day, the way to, ensure that our impact goes further is to raise wonderful kids who, will have similar or better values than us. And I think
And
you're
to
on the right
add,
track.
yeah, no, totally, Junaid. And to add to that, I want my kids to see that my focus is not on, you know, hanging out with friends necessarily, or it's to just focus on my business solely for the sake of building more business or financial success. I want my kids and my family to see that my focus is on doing good work. And so, my kid comes with me to my charity events, for example, because I want him to understand from an early age that we're here on this earth to do good work and to help people, not to selfishly gain more and more for ourselves. So my hope is, with kind of the work that I do, develop that passion in my children so that they can carry on that legacy and work more so than anything else that they could carry from me.
I think that's outstanding perspective to have, and I think that's probably a good place to end this conversation. Furqan, thanks very much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in real life very soon.
Inshallah, I look forward to it, Junaid. Thank you so much for reaching out. Thanks for putting this podcast together. It's an amazing idea. And inshallah, it's going to be of great benefit to a lot of students over the coming years that are interested in law. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Thanks, Furqan. Have a good one.
Take care, Junaid. All right, buddy. Take it easy. Assalamu alaikum.
Take care. Walaikum salam.